All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining today's December 4th CTAC meeting. It is the very last CTAC quarterly meeting for the 2024 calendar year. Um, so thank you so much for carving out some time in this busy season coming out of the Thanksgiving holiday, but getting ready also for the other holidays coming up in December. So I know that we all have a lot on our plates before we check out for the holidays. So I thank you all immensely for giving us your time today for this meeting. Um, as you know, this meeting is being recorded, um, and uh, what we will go over today is a quick project overview and advisor CTAC, the advisory community, the Community First Technology Advisory goals and objectives, as we always review them in the beginning for any folks that are new to this space, that are still getting acquainted to the project. We always review that just to be mindful of any new folks that are joining in. And then we'll quickly then just pivot into our main presentation for today, which is focused on findings from all of the different recommendations, comments we've received from all of our CTAC meetings that we have conducted since we started this effort back in 2022. And so there'll be lots of opportunity for discussion. We have some great questions to garner input from you all. And then we'll close it out. So should be a quick and short meeting. But before that, let's kick it off with some team introductions. So I'm Giovanni Hernandez, Clean Mobility Program Manager with Grid Alternatives of the Greater Los Angeles region. And before I kick it off to my colleague, I'd love to ask of all of you if you all could just put in the chat your name, your org, where you're joining us from today. We'd love to hear that. And if I don't have your email address, please input your email address in the chat as well, so that you can be included in all of the the follow-up messaging that we send out after the meeting, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I'd love to kick it off to my colleague Stella.
Thank you, Giovanni. Good morning, everyone. Happy holidays. My name is Stella Ursua. I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Partnerships here at the LA office of Grid Alternatives. And thank you all so much for joining. We know that we're trying to pack in so much right before the holiday. Our office shuts down for the week between Christmas and New Year. And so I can imagine how everyone out there is running right now. So thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Gia?
Hi guys, I'm Giovanna Scamilla. I'm an associate project manager here at CalSTART. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll pass it to Kristen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kristen Bush. I am a data analyst and researcher with EBRI's electric transportation team. And I'm looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts on the call today.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, team. And sorry, can you all see my screen? Just want to confirm. You can see my screen share?
Yes.
Beautiful,
Okay.
beautiful. Thank you. All right. So with that, I'll kick it off to Gia for just a quick project overview.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, quick eTruck recap. eTruck's purpose as a project is to create a California research hub to facilitate and accelerate the electrification of the heavy-duty drayage vehicle market. Our goals and objectives include advancing the research, development, and demonstration needed to extend the delivery range of heavy-duty battery electric trucks. We also aim to engage broad stakeholders to ensure eTruck utilizes community feedback and input to promote community engagement and workforce development with a community-first approach. And lastly, the project aims to plan, design, and deploy innovative public corridor charging strategies for battery electric trucks, and this is beginning with drayage. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Gia. So, again, just a quick recap of this advisory committee, which in short is CTAC, right? That we call CTAC for the Community First Technology Advisory Committee. And so, its goal is to use a community first engagement framework in all phases of this project to ensure that pollution impacted, underserved, and tribal communities are all involved in creating and guiding this initiative. And so, the objectives are to help inform the project, which is why we're always seeking that input, feedback in many of the different activities that we roll out in this effort coming out of this community engagement framework, right? Disseminating and soliciting, again, input on project activities, from stakeholders, but also from the community, and promoting equity in throughout the project in our priority communities that we are targeting. So with that, let's send it back over to Gia for some quick overall project updates.
Okay, so coming up in Q1 2025, we're going to have our EV Site Planning 101 Industry Partner Webinar presentation. And then on the website, the Fleet Charging Infrastructure Needs and Technology Maturity Assessment final report is now available, so you can go check that out. eTruck's Advanced Transportation Research Center is now open for Phase A testing, so up to 350 kilowatts at SCE's EV Charging Lab in Pomona, California. For the pilot demonstration sites, construction began this summer in Ontario and Carson. And then we have eTruck's Regional Freight Heat Map, which is live on the eTruck website, and we are working on incorporating an equity layer with all of your feedback. And finally, you can find us if you scan the QR code on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and Facebook. And then right here, we have some photos of our the Keysight charging equipment at the SCE EV charging lab. So right now it is up to 350 kilowatts, and next year it will be megawatt loop capable testing.
Awesome. Thank you, Gia. All right. So with that, let's just pivot to our main presentation for today, which is related to, again, just providing you all with some key findings that we have been able to compile from all of the CTAC meetings that we have conducted between August 2022 through September of 2024, right? So that's when we first launched, right, and had our first CTAC meeting was back in August 2022. And so in total, there have been 9 CTAC meetings, excluding this one, and 1 subcommittee meeting. And at these meetings, we have covered a variety of relevant topics and have had numerous guest presenters provide their perspectives and recommendations relevant to the goals of this project. The following slides in this presentation will highlight a compilation of some common themes, concerns, feedback, and recommendations we heard from you all and from our guest presenters during these meetings. Our goal today is to present you with this overview and solicit your thoughts and additional feedback and/or recommendations you may have for this project. Perhaps you missed, a meeting in the past. And today would be an opportunity to chime in on a topic that you would like to comment on that maybe you didn't get a chance to in the past. We will sprinkle 3 questions embedded within this presentation to gather more input and hear from you all. Your input helps guide every step of the project from site selection to engagement strategies. Stakeholder feedback has been at the heart of shaping the eTruck initiative. And so here's a summary of what we heard from you all so far. So some of the things we heard were definitely a consensus uh, uh, in terms of it being a high priority of improving air quality in disadvantaged communities that have been historically impacted by the goods movement, right? Such as reducing emissions along major freight corridors as listed on the slide, such as the 710, the 91, 605, 405, 5 freeways. Um, and some key success indicators that were mentioned very early on from stakeholders of what they would like to see or what would indicate success in this project, right? Obviously significant reductions in community health issues such as asthma and lung diseases due to um, high emissions. Uh, uh, Another success indicator, adequate charging infrastructure deployed, uh, and zero emissions adoption, right, of medium duty, heavy duty trucks, right? There's no sense in installing chargers if there's no adoption, right, for the technology in electric trucks. And of course, demonstrating feasibility and readiness of zero emissions technology. Additionally, I do want to mention that at the heart of this project is a vision of healthier, more resilient communities. And so, yes, you see here some success indicators that were brought up, but success isn't just about meeting emissions goals. It's also about ensuring that the infrastructure and technologies deployed actively enhance the lives of those most affected by freight traffic today, right? And that's that equity piece that we always keep bringing up. So I did want to make sure to also emphasize that in this slide. Um, Equity, again, a good segue from that last statement, again, is a cornerstone of this project. And so we're working to ensure that charging infrastructure benefits disadvantaged communities while avoiding unintended negative impacts. And so recommendations that came up during our meetings are as such, right? So addressing displacement fears around charging station sites, incorporating indigenous and tribal knowledge into the planning process, um, in tribal communities, of course, in terms of prioritizing disadvantaged communities, locating infrastructure that's closer to already established truck routes, rather than through residential areas or near schools, right? So there was also a big safety component that has been brought up throughout our meetings. So balancing infrastructure needs with community-specific concerns like, again, public safety and air quality. And then, of course, in relation to just overall community benefits, um, you know, uh, the opportunities just in the green sector, clean transportation, uh, world, just the jobs and workforce development that could be developed, right? Uh, uh, Within these priority communities that we have been talking about. And so that is something that has been brought up by a lot of our members of the CTAC, to ensure that we're working on this. And I just put this here because many of you already know we have already a different advisory committee that we are facilitating, which is the Workforce Development Advisory Committee. That is its sole focus, right? Is definitely the opportunities in this sector, new jobs, new trainings, new workforce opportunities. And so that group we're working separately with that group, but I wanted to just kind of reassure folks that it's not something we are not paying attention to. It's just something we're working separately with our Workforce Development Advisory Committee. And we've taken a lot of good input from this group that has, translated over to the other advisory committee. So I just wanted to mention that, right? And of course, other benefits, we've heard loud and clear of enhancing local infrastructure for biking, walking, and transit near charging stations. Um, And as we advance this groundbreaking project, it's crucial to address barriers like infrastructure, readiness, and equitable transition for all stakeholders. So by planning collaboratively and inclusively, we can navigate these challenges effectively. So here are some challenges that were brought up for the project to address, right? So when we are engaging the community, right? That there be strategic multi-language outreach to raise awareness, um, you know, avoiding stakeholder burnout, given that we know there are very similar clean transportation projects happening at the same time, right? Concurrently and in the same regions that we're talking about. And so many of you all and of our other stakeholders are also involved in all these other initiatives. So being mindful of everyone's times and involvement in very similar projects that are happening all at the same time. Um, in terms of infrastructure planning, um, ensuring a just transition for truck drivers and businesses that are reliant on the existing technologies. And that proposed sites should avoid areas prone to vehicle truck crashes. And then other barriers that were brought up, avoiding displacement of communities or businesses due to infrastructure changes, and mitigating potential road damages caused by heavier electric trucks. Um, so those are some things that have come up, and with this here, we actually have our first discussion question where I want to open up the mics to you all. So as you all know, and we I don't think we've mentioned this in a while. This is just phase one of the e-truck project, right? And so from all that we have discussed and heard so far, what haven't we considered, addressed, talked about in our meetings? What other considerations do you have for future phases of this project as it ramps up? So wanna maybe give 5 minutes or so for discussion and hear from you all. So feel free to raise your hand, go off mute. Would love to hear from you all on that. So again, what haven't we considered, addressed, talked about? What other considerations do you have for future phases of this project as it ramps up?
Hey Giovanni, this is Erin Wimberly speaking. I just want to say that there's really a lot here. There's like so much to tackle, like even just safety on its own. There's like so many facets to it. I wonder, and maybe we have a question that's going to be leading up to this soon. If people have any ideas about like what they would like to see prioritized here first.
Yes, no, thank you for that, Aaron. And no, absolutely. I acknowledge there's a lot of different themes here that we can really dive into and just have our own convos, uh, deep dives, right? Um, and there's other things we're going to discuss in this presentation, and perhaps if folks want to kind of mull on this one a little bit, and I can re-ask it afterwards, um, uh, and proceed with the presentation here, and perhaps other things ideas spur as the presentation goes along. But we can come back to that question at the end here. So let's move it along here with the next slide. Um, so in terms of engagement best practices, right? So building trust and fostering active participation are central to this project's success. So this means meeting people where they are, both geographically and culturally, and ensuring every step of the process reflects the priorities and values of the communities we serve. So some recommendations that we heard from many of our members, stakeholders of this group, for engagement best practices that were raised were, of course, partnering with local organizations for intergenerational engagement. And so by that, breaking that down a little bit, we kind of mean like we heard from some folks, there are some members of the community that are still reliant on going to the community centers, right, and getting their information that way. And there are subsets of the population that are just solely getting their information on social media, right? And so many folks are getting information, getting informed via different mechanisms, different ways. And so that's what we heard from folks, just being aware of that and what it was meant by intergenerational engagement. So hosting town halls and events perhaps in the future in community spaces like libraries and farmers markets, um, um, requesting greater transparency on site impacts and project goals to provide to the community. Um, when we are messaging to the community, really emphasizing public health and environmental justice in our messaging, meeting regularly with community leaders and groups to create a long-term partnership, and investing in translation, food, and accessible venues to support inclusive engagement. And I also do want to mention like a lot of this also pertains to could pertain to future phases of the project. Again, we're just in phase one. We're able to only do so much during this phase. And so these are all amazing and great recommendations that were brought up for folks that we are taking as can be implemented as well in future phases of this project as it continues to ramp up. We move closer to site selection, to constructions, right? It's been talked about having community engagement at every facet of this project. And so a lot of these best practices and recommendations that were provided to us, we're taking that to really embed, not just in this phase, whatever we can fit into this phase one, but also looking ahead in what we can do in the future phases of this project. All right. Some other things that were brought up were just data needs for decision making. So using GIS to map pollution concentrations, health impacts, and disadvantaged communities' proximities, tracking air quality improvements and reductions in vehicle miles traveled, developing equity heat maps to prioritize community first site selection. And as many of you all know, right, this project is working on equity heat map. And we have solicited input for an equity layer within this heat map. And of course, using many of the available tools that are out there as well, such as Cal EnviroScreen, et cetera, that address some of this sort of gathering of data for decision making as we move along in this project. Highlighting economic, environmental, and public health outcomes is something that was also brought up. And then also like just learning from other projects. Again, we mentioned there's a lot of similar projects happening right now. In the past, we've talked about, Electric Island project in Portland, the JETSI project that's happening here in Southern California. Very similar initiative to this one. So what are some lessons learned, best practices that we can take from some of these other similar projects Um, what sort of data can we collect from what they've done and be able to also embed what's relevant into our projects. Um, so I had slated here our next discussion question. So I'll pose it to the group and see if there's anything that we can get related to this question. Uh, so what stakeholders, organizations, uh, do you think are missing or haven't been present, right, in this space, this particular advisory committee that could be beneficial to be present, right, in 2025 and beyond? So wanted to open it up. Are there other groups out there that you all partner with that you know are working in this sort of related sector as it pertains to air quality, goods movement, et cetera, et cetera? Who else do you think should be at the table? And we'd love to hear recommendations from you all.
Giovanni, this is Stella. I was just thinking about this question and trying to recall, do we have any neighborhood council members or leaders that we've engaged in E-Truck?
So, not neighborhood councils because there wasn't many that really fell along the 710 corridor, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that was something we deeply looked at in the very beginning. And also it wasn't it didn't pertain to like the other major freeways we're looking going into Carson or the Inland Empire, right? Because the neighborhood councils is specific to the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so there was really the 710 really runs through a lot of southeast cities. And there wasn't a lot of jurisdiction for
Yeah.
city of LA neighborhood councils along that route. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the reminder. I could not remember, but maybe neighborhood associations. Um, what do you call those? The like the block um safety. I can't think of the term, but it's, like each neighborhood has, they're smaller organizations, but, something that focuses on neighborhood safety and, other issues that may arise there in their particular areas. So just wanted to put that out there.
Yes, no, thank you, thank you. And I do want to acknowledge that we have had presence of a neighborhood council member from Watts, I believe, that was invited by Commissioner Badejo. And I believe sh- she joined our WEDAC meetings, and not necessarily this meeting for the community engagement, but more on the workforce related side of things. Oh, actually, I think I see
Yeah.
that. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. Thank you, Commissioner Berdejo. Yeah, from the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. Thank you for the reminder because I did remember there was someone, but not in this space.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And thank you for those groups you mentioned there, Aaron. That's really helpful.
Mhm. Those are great suggestions.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And Michael, Caltrans, LA Metro, understanding future planning efforts and transportation along the 710 corridor to not preclude any e-truck planning concept. Would you like to elaborate a little more on that, Michael?
Sure. Yeah, like we've done a few projects, like not specifically along the 710, but we just know there's like long range planning efforts that I think Metro has just improvements that have affected either like widening the freeway and also have gone into like putting sound barriers and things along the freeway. So that could affect like residents and communities in those areas, and just if there's any other like planning efforts that they might have down the pipeline. Um, yeah, just understanding if there could be any impacts to what eTruck is proposing. I think just so there's, yeah, like, I don't know, no surprises that might prevent any infrastructure conflicts or things like that. Having early discussions, I think, would always be helpful. So everyone's kind of on the same page on, yeah, the betterment of our region.
Yes, no, that's a great suggestion, Michael. Thank you for raising that. That's something that we'll definitely take into account in our planning. Eileen, I see Eileen has her hand up.
Hi, can you remind me about this, like if you invite community members or if it's
To
just organizations? Yeah, to the E-Truck, to the CTAC.
Yes, absolutely. No, so this advisory committee has been specific to just community-based organizations, stakeholder groups, not really like individual community members. Um, uh, Later next year, we will launch an effort to obtain feedback from community members via a survey that the project will deploy. So we will seek to gather individual community feedback next year by launching this survey in the priority disadvantaged communities that this project is targeting. But yeah, this group has been specific just to like CBOs, nonprofits, um, doing work along the targeted priority communities for the project.
Okay, got you. I was also kind of because I was thinking of like volunteer groups or but I was also thinking maybe like schools, if that could be, because they definitely have like an invested interest in, like air quality concerns, right?
Mhm. So maybe like
Or
if
school
there's
districts, yeah.
yeah, the school looking at school districts. Okay, yeah, it's a good suggestion. Yeah, because we've only brought up school districts on like really on the workforce related side of things, like working um, with some type of like curriculum build out to engage uh, schools that way. But we haven't really discussed, like a partnership with school districts in this space. So I think that's a really good recommendation. Thank you for that, Eileen.
And Giovanni, I just put it came to me, neighborhood watch organizations. That's what I was trying to think of earlier.
Mhm.
But also healthcare organizations. I can't remember if I think we did some outreach at the very beginning, but those healthcare orgs, hospitals, healthcare that have community benefit initiatives that they are, trying to roll out. I think they might be interested in what we're doing here.
Yeah, no, we definitely tried in the beginning, and we had no luck getting any healthcare organizations to come on board. Unfortunately, I think we got some initial meetings with them, but no like commitments, unfortunately, to be joining us regularly to provide their perspectives. But we can keep trying. We can keep trying for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and if anyone, thinks of anything after this meeting, please by all means, get a hold of us, get a hold of Giovanni, because we're really trying to just fine tune that list and make sure that everyone is engaged that needs to be engaged. So thank you.
All right, thank you all. So let's move it along here. We just got two more slides here uh in this presentation. So um you know speaking of, right, like who else should be at the table, who else should we be partnering with, right? For future discussions. So we've heard in the past, right? We've heard from members of this group here collaborating with the ports, municipal organizations, state, federal agencies, engaging tribal communities, right? Um, to integrate indigenous perspectives into project design, for for tribal communities. And then of course, here's where workforce has been brought up again is linking workforce opportunities to medium heavy duty infrastructure, um, and partnering with different like workforce agencies, CBOs that do that kind of work. And so we are again doing that, having that level of partnership and having those discussions with the other advisory committee. But I just put it here because again, it's been brought up in this space, and I want to make sure that we're acknowledging that, and just want to say we're working with the other advisory committee specific to workforce on those opportunities. And so some actionable next steps that have also been raised is expanding community education efforts and training programs and building partnerships with CBOs and corp-like organizations, right, to foster local expertise. Um, and you know, path forward, right? Moving forward as we go into next year, but also into the future phases of this project. Um, this project underscores the urgency of meeting national air quality standards while also advancing equity in disadvantaged communities. So by focusing on the 710 corridor, um, and the other major corridors that we've talked about, and engaging with communities most impacted, we can ensure that this project becomes a model for transformative clean transportation solutions. And so, as we're looking ahead, again, we want to finalize that equity layer, right, for the regional freight heat map that we've talked about. Um, we want to conduct public engagement to finalize ZEV infrastructure site selection. We want to launch community-centered programs for workforce development. And so a lot of this, again, pertains also, I do want to acknowledge, to other phases of the project. Some of them pertains to this phase, planning, compiling best practices recommendations, then to be able to launch in a more robust manner some of these activities, recommendations that could be embedded in the future phases of the project as well, that was unable to occur during phase one. Um, and also, I wanted to mention, and this has been brought up before too, was just centering the human element in project communications to demonstrate real world benefits, right? So, not being too wonky and technical all the time, right? So really keeping that in mind when we're engaging the community, when we're having these town halls, when we're deploying messaging that is specifically targeted to community members, and really differentiating messaging that is intended for, you know, those working in this sector day in, day out, versus, you know, uh, community members who perhaps have never really been involved in any ZEV related conversations, right? And so really differentiating the messaging there. Um, and again, continuing to address stakeholder concerns about environmental and community impacts associated with this project. Uh, so, um, as I've alluded to, uh, the eTruck team plans to deploy a survey next year to gather site selection feedback from community members in priority communities for this project. So my last and third question that I had prepped here for you all on this last slide of the presentation is, what do you think is a question that must be included in a community survey targeting disadvantaged communities in priority communities identified for this project? So again, this team is gearing up to deploying a survey, and we wanted to make sure that we gathered the feedback and recommendations from our CTAC members on what question do you all think is crucial to have in this survey. Would love to hear any recommendations and thoughts that you all have on that.
Giovanni, this is Stella again. While folks are thinking of their questions, it feels like there should be a question at the very top of that survey that, basically, how do I want to put this? Like, how much do they know about, zero emission trucks, transportation, charging stations? So something that kind of sets the stage up there, I see Kendra nodding her head. So, yeah, just something, so that we know, what the level of engagement has been, or level of understanding, basically.
Yeah, I unmuted to say that, I was just kind of wondering if this is the general public, how much do folks understand about the infrastructure of the vehicles? I mean, maybe what questions do you have? Like, what information would be helpful for you to understand how the the prevalence increasing of these vehicles and this infrastructure will impact your community? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Thank you, Miss Stella and Kendra, for that. That's a very good point of just kind of gauging the level of understanding. I like how you framed that as well, Kendra, of what other information do you need from us? I like that. Because that gives us as well a good guidance, right? Of also like what else maybe this project would need to produce to help increase the level of understanding um, and meeting the community right where they're at in terms of their level of understanding and being able to meet that with the kinds of information that they like to see and would like to have. So yeah, those are really good points. Thank you for
And
that.
Giovanni, yeah, I would just add to that, something around workforce development, because that's always, like it's a hot button, right? Like what kind of jobs are going to be created. So,
Yeah, tying it into the economic benefits, opportunities, right?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I think
Eh,
also asking about accessibility challenges to attaining or obtaining education and educational resources, right? So not necessarily just like we need more what's it called? Like workshops, right? But like what do you need from a workshop? Like we need childcare at a workshop, or we need like
mm,
food at a workshop, or we need translation at a workshop to understand like what would make it more enticing to go to a workshop.
mm. Yes, yes. Like, what do you need to be present at this workshop kind of thing, right? Town hall workshop. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
precisely.
Yes, thank you for that. Anyone else? Anything else that comes to mind for folks? Um, thank you for elaborating there, Kendra, in the chat. What concerns do they have about the trucks and the charging infrastructure? How do community members want to be engaged in helping increase prevalence of EV goods movement and charging infrastructure, i.e. job training? Yes, that's great. Thank you for putting that in there, Kendra. Anything else that comes to mind for folks? Really, uh, what's next here was just Q&A. So I also would love to open it up to uh, just widely if there's things that folks want to add to some of the questions that we've raised. But if there's any questions you have of your own, want to open up the space for that as well.
I just wanted to add, and I know I've brought this up before in these meetings, the need for kind of compensation and like stipends for community members and CBOs as well. We found in our own community engagement activities that offering some kind of incentive, some kind of financial incentive has been really effective in getting more responses. And like also, it's fair compensation. Like you're getting information from people, so they deserve to be compensated for what they're giving you. But it like the amount of like we've seen, we've compared like smaller amounts of, like dollars compared to like larger amounts of dollars. It has just been like the difference is stark, right? So I would like highly encourage that.
Mhm. Yes, no, thank you for that, Eileen. We were able to roll out a small stipend program here with this e-truck project, uh, where currently, right, we have provided a stipend for 3 CBOs for the community engagement side of things and 3 CBOs on the workforce side of things that each serve on the advisory committees. But also, point taken, right? As you're indicating, for the community members, for individuals actually providing their input. And Miss Stella and I like had the opportunity to, I don't know, it was like a year or two ago, we were able to see partake in a meeting where unrelated to E-Truck. It was a different meeting that people in attendance were getting stipends. They were community members that were getting stipends for attending a meeting and providing their feedback and input. So that's perhaps like a similar style that could be mimicked, right, for future phases with your recommendation, Eileen. I think it was like California Jobs First meeting, Miss Stella. Do you remember that when there was, I think you were facilitating it. It was like 100+ people and it was all community members and I think they were all being compensated, right, for being at that meeting. Do you remember that meeting?
Yeah. Gosh, that was so long ago. But yeah,
Mhm.
it was either California Jobs First, or the Green Task Force.
Mhm.
But I think it was the first one. Yeah, so we definitely understand the importance. I mean, yeah, it's critical that we're able to compensate folks for their time, for their feedback, for their engagement of others, because that's the only way that we're going to get the word out and that we're going to have true representation of our, for our underserved communities. So important. Thank you.
And I think it's great feedback, Eileen, to these kinds of projects, like for future phases, but also just similar projects in general, um, to make it the norm to allot money in the budget for that, right? I don't think we really see that widely, right? And lived experience is expertise, right? And so when we collect that and engage people to gather that data, that information, compensating for that, to your point, right? So I appreciate you raising that, and I think there could be a better practice of taking that into account and allotting money for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
Anyone else? Any questions that folks have? All right. Well, it was going to be a short and sweet meeting. So let me move us along here. Uh, just 2 next steps. Again, this is the last quarterly CTAC meeting for the year. Very soon, we will send out communication just about our plans for quarterly meetings for next year for 2025. Um, we are, looking, we're eyeing perhaps doing an in-person one for like a facility tour. That's a dream that we have that we want to be able to execute. More on that later, right? But for sure, I think we will be doing 3 quarterly meetings instead of the 4 for 2025. Um, and when we have the dates finalized, we will be sure to send that all out well in advance before the end of this year. So you all have that calendar invites and all before the end of the year so that folks can plan accordingly. And then we do have one more industry partner webinar series that we want to execute. We had to postpone the EV Site Planning 101 that we wanted to do in this quarter that we're now moving to 2025. So keep an eye out for that. We are just finalizing details for a date, but that's coming, either probably like Q2 of next year. And then as always, we will follow up with a copy of the presentation and meeting summary with a link to the recording of this meeting for you all to check out in your own time if you want to review it again, and for others that were unable to join us today to be able to tune in that way. Before we close out, I just wanted to turn it over to Miss Stella for any for closing remarks.
Thank you, Giovanni, and thank you for another wonderful presentation. Really appreciate it. And I just wanted to quickly say, once again, thank you for everyone's involvement. We have a small turnout today, but that's okay. I know, like I said at the beginning, folks are scrambling a little bit just to finish off the year, so completely understand. But we really do appreciate your involvement, your feedback, your engagement of your local communities and your local community members. This is all very critical to this effort. When we first started eTruck, as Giovanni mentioned, back in 2022, was it? Yeah, 2022. We were very excited. We still are about the opportunities here, about being part of this whole effort, this whole movement. And so next year, we hope that we're going to be able to, as was mentioned earlier, be able to go and actually see one of these sites, whether it's a charging hub or it's at the research center. I'm one of those where I've got to see it to believe it kind of thing. And so, I'm sure that there are some folks that are in the same mindset. What's all this talk about, electric vehicles and charging hubs, etc. Giovanni and I attended an event in Fontana at their racetrack the first year, I think it was. And we got to actually drive the trucks, the electric trucks, which was just amazing. It was really, really cool. So we're hoping that you will have an opportunity to do that as well, to see the trucks up close, to see the charging infrastructure, the charging hubs as well. So it'll be our last year. We want to have some fun. We want you to be able to see, touch, and feel these things that we've been talking about. But most importantly, we thank you for being part of this effort and for helping us get the word out. So thank you all. We know that 2025 is going to be a very interesting year, could be challenging, but we're committed to this and we're focused, and so we're glad that you're part of this effort. So thank you all. Happy holidays and happy 2025 to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you.